Now, you've gone through a great many prime ministers since Brexit, both on the Conservative side and now on Labour too. Does the average Brit just see anyone, whether it's on the center right or the center left, as too far from their own sensibilities, as representing a Britain whose time has passed?
Part of the problem is that people's expectations are completely out of whack with what the country is naturally delivering. Part of it is that social media helps to whip up real anger. Part of it is that even when good policy decisions are made, it takes a long time for people to feel the benefits. And the background story is an economy that's growing quite slowly, a population that's aging, increasing debt, not great productivity. So the question is, what do you do about this? And broadly speaking, the only people who've got radical answers to this are, of course, on the far right, populist far right, or on the populist left. So on the populist left, you've got more extreme versions, I guess, of Bernie Sanders in the form of Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader. And on the far right, you've got Nigel Farage. And broadly, you'd guess what their solutions are. The right, broadly speaking, thinks the answer is radical, Thatcherite, Reagan-style, neoliberal, make it easier for business, get rid of all the regulations, let business drive growth with low taxes. And on the far left, it's wealth taxes, it's going after the rich, it's building a more equal society, it's centralized industrial policy. But what isn't delivering is the old center ground, which would be, I suppose, the kind of center ground of the Democrats in the US, the kind of third way consensus which we associated with Tony Blair or Bill Clinton. That kind of worldview, a kind of pragmatically regulated free market, is not, people feel, delivering.
So we now have this fellow, Andy Burnham, seems to be very different from what solutions the Brits had been offered by their leaders. And yet, what I hear from you is that we shouldn't probably expect very much from his administration either.
I don't think you should expect anything startling in terms of unlocking British economic growth. I mean, one of the things is that he hasn't actually talked very much about the economy or where the money's going to come from. What he has done is immediately begun by saying that he wants to do things for adult social care, in other words, for the vulnerable elderly. He wants to address homelessness. He wants to do radical devolution. He wants to push power down to neglected areas of the north of England, for example. And finally, he wants to do much better vocational training for the 10, 20% of society who really struggle academically and who maybe could be helped a lot by getting high quality skills training. This is a man who is a Catholic, whose guiding question often seems to be, is this decent? Is this hospital where I would want to put my mother? Do I want to see homeless people on the street? So it's an idea of trying to raise standards, create a Britain that he's proud of. But we don't hear very much about where the money's going to come from to pay for those things.
I mean, Starmer got into a lot of trouble in part because he was on the wrong side of the Epstein case and all of the rest. I'm wondering if Burnham, even if he can't actually deliver, but he is seen as decent, as an example of what a British person, a British citizen, a British leader should be. Can that be enough?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, I think maybe you're right, Ian, in putting your finger on the fact that in politics, it isn't all about delivery. It is partly about values and personality and optimism and communication. And he is a much, much better communicator. Keir Starmer was this very, very rigid, wooden lawyer who found it very difficult to talk without sounding like he was reading from a script. Andy has been the mayor of Greater Manchester, which is a big, big city. I mean, it'd be like being, the equivalent of being the mayor of Chicago or something. And so he's coming into it with the spirit of a mayor, much more used to executive power, much more used to dealing with other parties in a pretty non-tribal fashion, in a world in which it's quite difficult to achieve really radical change. I mean, for example, let's say he wanted to make the entire British education system more like the Swiss education system. That's not a 1 year, 2 year project. Same with housing, 15, 20 year project. Getting re-elected or even surviving to the next election may not be about delivering these generational changes. It may be more about seeming to be in touch, seeming to listen to people, seeming to care may count for a great deal.